Yo, my beats, they are hard.
Hello and welcome to the BCSN Sports Wrap. My name is Bryan Fulford, and joining me, as always, for our wrap-up show, this is our week number 9 wrap-up show, my man AD Drew. AD, man, these games keep get more exciting and more exciting, and the cost of a loss is mighty significant these days. How you doing, my friend?
I am doing fine. And speaking of the cost of losses, what is going to happen with the SIAC and Biles with that big upset loss that they had? Question one. Question two, Fayetteville State with that loss that they had. So we've got a couple of teams who had good playoff aspirations. And let's not forget West Virginia State with that loss last week. We've got some teams who've had some playoff aspirations who have taken the L at the wrong time of the year.
We had 4 teams in our top 5 under D1 poll lose this past week. 4 teams. Yes. And wouldn't you know it, that the only team that did not lose is the team on top of the poll.
Right. I mean, we knew there was going to be at least one loss in our poll just based on the head-to-head matchup. None of us expected the other 3.
Right.
And when you look at our FCS poll, I mean, did we expect the MEAC to go into the chaos that it has this week? You know, the only non-MEAC team that we have in our poll is Alcorn State as of right now. And the way the SWAC is playing, looks like Alcorn State is going to be the only team that's going to remain in our poll, at least for the near future.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Although there is a team on the outside of our poll in the SWAC that I think is rising up to the level that they might sneak into the poll in another week. I think obviously we need to see the outcome of some games from week number 10, but if some things play out, we might have a new team in our top 5. I mean, our top 5 in the FCS has not changed in the now, 3 weeks that we've debuted or run our poll. So
I think just the order has changed, but it's pretty much primarily been the same 5 teams. So
yeah. So
and who is that surprise team for you, Bryan? Who's on the outside?
I will get to that a little bit later as we get into the meat of this review. And we want to first, let me set the table for people who are coming in and joining us. We want to ask you to interact with us. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at MyBCSN1. That's the number 1. Please make sure to find our web page, our Facebook page using the same at MyBCSN1. You can also go to our BCSN Sports Wrap page. You can find that as well. And, of course, our website is www.mybcsn.net. That's where you'll find a recap of all of the games from week number 9, as well as the listing of top performers, as well as some different kind of articles. We're starting to get to that level. We're able to kind of do some content, and one of the articles that you'll be able to read is just some playoff scenario thoughts in Division II. because obviously when we think about Division II, that's really the only level in which the HBCUs are actually competing in the playoffs in the national scene, as obviously the MEAC and SWAC have chosen to go with the bowl route and play in the Celebration Bowl and send their champion to the Celebration Bowl instead of actually playing in the FCS playoffs. So AD, let's jump. Let's first in this first segment, let's kind of go through the FCS action, and we're going to start with the only matchup that was between two teams in our top 5, and that was number 5 South Carolina State traveling to number 2 Bethune-Cookman on homecoming for the Wildcats. Bethune had won 5 games in a row. South Carolina State just coming off the win last week for Coach Buddy Pugh's 129th as the coach of the South Carolina State Bulldogs. And, of course, the week before, they lost the game to Florida A&M and sort of, surrendered the number 1 spot or the tie for the number 1 spot. And so this is one of those games, AD, where I think going in, we looked at it as if South Carolina State were to lose this game, this is a game that would essentially sort of knock them out of any type of contention because they would have 2 losses against 2 of the other 3 best teams in the division or in the conference, and pretty much I doubt, it would be very hard to imagine a scenario that could see them get in. You picked South Carolina State. I picked Bethune-Cookman. And, this game in some inclement weather, of course, in Daytona Beach, the Bulldogs would actually have a 27-13 lead over Bethune-Cookman at halftime. Pretty surprising second quarter. There were 33 points that were scored in the second quarter, AD, to put South Carolina State up ahead. And they actually did it with again. South Carolina State went to both quarterbacks. They used not only Tyrese Nick, but they went to redshirt freshman Corey Fields. Both threw touchdown passes in that second quarter. Bethune-Cookman actually managed to get a couple of touchdowns. I mean, for a minute, Bethune-Cookman had a lead. They had a 13-7 lead before South Carolina State went on and scored 2 touchdowns. And probably the key play of that quarter came with 35 seconds remaining in the second quarter, in which Zafir Kelly, make sure I say that name right, returned an interception 55 yards and a Kevius Williams pass for a pick 6 that instantly took the game from 20-13 to 27-13. And sure enough, we're thinking, hey, the second half, we might have scoring like we did in the second quarter. It didn't happen. Bethune only scored once in the third quarter, and South Carolina State shut them out from there. Final score, South Carolina State 27, Bethune-Cookman 19. Spoiled homecoming for the Wildcats. Your thoughts, AD?
There's a phrase, "I told you so" mean anything to you, Bryan? No, I'm just joking.
There's what now? What did you say? What?
I said, does the phrase "I told you so" mean anything to you?
Oh, come on, boo!
I'm just joking with you, Bryan. I'm just joking with you. But great for South Carolina State to come back after 2 consecutive weeks of disappointing close losses that they had to rebound and take away the homecoming celebration for the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. It's tough going in and playing somebody else on their homecoming, and they were able to do that. So once again, kudos to South Carolina State for that victory. What's interesting about this matchup, Bryan, is that South Carolina State victory has created total chaos for the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. First of all, and I know we haven't talked about Florida A&M yet, but I'm going to kind of jump ahead here, Bryan. That win about South Carolina State has opened up a door where Florida A&M University can be the national champions, and we'll talk about those scenarios a little bit later. But right now, Bryan, the top three teams in this conference, A&T, South Carolina State, and Bethune, all control their own destiny, with Florida A&M being ineligible for the playoffs. So the MEAC is in chaos, Bryan. You know, the game was good despite the conditions that it was played in, but the MEAC is in chaos. I'm just gonna leave it there without getting too long-winded, Bryan.
Well, let me clarify a couple of things for you. South Carolina State, they actually the loss, they haven't lost 2 weeks in a row, so it was just 2 weeks ago. I think it may have been what you were saying. 2 weeks ago they lost to A&M,
yes.
And of course last week they did end up winning that game. And I think the word chaos, you know, I think it sets up for it. Now look, I think chaos would come I think chaos would come should South Carolina State beat A&T. That's when I think chaos would happen, and I'll tell you why. See, right now you've got three teams with one loss, but you got to remember A&T has not played South Carolina State yet, and they haven't played Bethune-Cookman yet. Those two contests are coming, and matter of fact, South Carolina State A&T playing in week number 10 this upcoming Saturday. That's where the chaos starts. Chaos starts based on, right now, I think South Carolina State winning that game, because now you have, amongst those three teams, everybody would have beaten somebody. You know what I'm saying? You don't have a clear team that's lost twice. And so you don't have to go into these crazy scenarios. And for FAMU is just kind of sitting back, doing what they need to do. You know, the Rattlers in their first game ranked number 20 nationally, ranked number 1 in our poll. You know, they beat Morgan State 24-12. It wasn't the offensive showcase. It wasn't the big blowout, but they covered the 9.5 points as a road favorite. They pretty much held Morgan State, I believe, to just a field goal, or maybe
they got a safety in the second half.
Okay, so they held them to 2 points in the second half. Yeah, and the defense technically didn't give up any points in the second half. So, you know, defense travels, and Florida A&M, I mean, they looked okay with, you know, Rashawn McKay had a pretty decent game, 25 of 35, threw a touchdown, threw an interception, 250-something yards. The defense not only getting a shutout in that second half, but, I mean, they did get a fumble return for a touchdown, so they scored points as too. And you know, so all in all, it's a good win. The Rattlers maybe could have put up more points. It's the first time that the Rattlers beat somebody by double digits since Fort Valley State in week 2. I think every opponent since then has all been within probably less than 7 points, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, they took care of business for them. North Carolina A&T, they boat raced Howard, you know, for homecoming. They put up 24 in the second quarter, 23 in the third quarter. You know, it was like 64-6. You know, homecoming is what it is. The greatest homecoming on earth turned into the greatest homecoming beating on earth. And so a disappointing season continues for Howard. But back to the original point you were making, I don't think we're quite at chaos. What is it? Chaos. What do they call it? The threat level. We're not at chaos level 5 yet. I think we're at about 4, maybe 3. We're not at 5 yet.
Let's go over a couple of things here, Bryan, since we're on this subject.
Sure.
Florida A&M, by far of the teams, even though they're ineligible, we're still going to talk about them, has the easiest schedule of everybody who has games remaining. They have playing Delaware State this Saturday with the bye week, then Howard before traveling down to Orlando, Florida to play Bethune for the Florida Classic. Florida by far has the easiest schedule, but they're ineligible for. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, and I believe all those games are in the state of Florida. They don't leave the state of Florida, correct? Del State is at home as well as.
Let's see. Florida, yes, they're
Howard.
at home. Yes, all the games are within the state of Florida for the remaining schedule.
Okay.
Good point, Brian. Good observation.
All right, go ahead with your next point.
South Carolina State, who's pretty much in the driver's seat, having the victory against Bethune, a victory this Saturday against A&T, pretty much guaranteed South Carolina State the BAC title because they were on the tiebreaker against both of those schools, Bethune and A&T. Now, speaking of A&T.
That's a home game for South Carolina State, too.
That is a home game, 1:30 in Orangeburg, South Carolina. Speaking of A&T by far has the toughest road to get to the BAC title, traveling to Orangeburg, South Carolina to play South Carolina State this week, traveling to Baltimore, Maryland to play Morgan State next week, although on paper they are a better team than Morgan. And it's still 2 consecutive road games for them. They get Bethune at home, could be their saving grace before playing that rival game against Central. Yes, they're better than Central on paper, but once again, this is a rival game. We know anything could happen in a rival game, Brian. And one last player in this scenario is Bethune-Cookman. They have a bye week this week. They travel to Dover, Delaware to play Delaware State on the 9th. They are at A&T on the 16th before coming back to the state of Florida to play a very inspired Florida A&M team who is gone 2 consecutive classes without beating the Bethune Wildcats. By far, they had their best team in a long time to beat the Bethune Wildcats. They're looking for revenge. They've avenged every other loss on their schedule from last year. That's going to be a tough game for Bethune to try to get over Florida A&M University.
Yeah, hey, well said. Great breakdown there. Final thought, is it too early to begin the arguments, pro or con, about Florida A&M being potentially the Black College National Champions, even though they aren't eligible for the Celebration Bowl, even though they haven't beaten Bethune-Cookman yet or even played them yet? And is it too soon to start having that discussion, in your opinion?
You will see my article coming out very soon going over the different scenarios in which you can claim Florida A&M for the mythical Black College National Championship. But it's not too soon, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. FAMU has to win out first. Before we can even really take this serious, FAMU has to go into that game against Bethune with the one loss to UCF, and then you can put it out there. Well, let's get into it. If Alcorn loses, that really takes a SWAC opponent out of the mix. Even though Alcorn is probably going to win the SWAC East. A loss by Alcorn on their schedule downgrades any other SWAC opponents. If you get anybody out the SWAC West, yes, FAMU automatically gets into the mix if you have a SWAC West opponent in the Celebration Bowl. Florida A&M runs the table in the BAC. Great argument, especially if what I think is going to happen where those top three teams are going to beat up on each other over the next 3 weeks. And I don't think any of these teams are coming out of the conference with just one loss. I think your top team in the MEAC, no matter which one of these three it is, will have 2 losses. If you have a 2-loss MEAC champion in the Celebration Bowl against the 2-loss SWAC champion, 2 or more loss SWAC champion, there's no reason Florida A&M University should not be the national champions.
I would, and you're saying even if are you qualifying Alcorn State being a 2-loss champion and not potentially having a shot at that title?
If Alcorn drops another game.
Oh, you're saying if they drop another game.
Yes, Alcorn's going to win the East. Alcorn owns every tiebreaker right now. Even if Alcorn drops another game, they are going to win the SWAC East.
Well, here I will push back on that for a second. They will be a prohibitive favorite to win the East, but they still have not played Alabama A&M yet, and that might be their lone obstacle. And I'll tell you what, they still have to play Grambling. So there are games for Alcorn State coming up in which Alcorn is going to have to – I take that back. Let's see. The next 2 – here, I'm going to break down the last 3 games for Alcorn. They're on a 5-game winning streak, and we're about to talk about them here in just a second in their game against Southern. But they're on a 5-game winning streak, obviously. But coming up, they got a bye week next week, this upcoming week. And then they're on the road at Grambling. They host Alabama A&M, and then they're on the road at Jackson State. So
all 3 of those are tough games. No, they're not shooting games.
They're not gimmies.
And actually, Jackson State of those teams, Jackson State controls its own destiny.
Well, yeah, exactly.
If Jackson State wins out, they win the East. Jackson State wins the East, make the argument for the Rattlers.
Okay, right. I see what you're saying.
If anybody but Alcorn wins the East, make the argument for the Rattlers.
I think just how about just winning the SWAC? I think if anyone other than Alcorn wins the SWAC, I think it's FAMU's. How about that?
Right. If Alcorn loses another game on their road to winning the SWAC, make the argument for Florida A&M.
Yeah, because at that point you've got a 1-loss, assuming FAMU wins out, you've got a 1-loss Florida A&M team at that point.
Correct.
So, okay. All right, so let's move over to that SWAC matchup that we were just kind of hinting at. It was the premier game for the SWAC. Our number 2 ranked team, Alcorn State, hosting Southern Jaguars. It's a rematch of the SWAC championship game. The teams played twice last year. AD and I both were on the side of the home team, Alcorn State. And, what's interesting is I think the one stat that stands out in this game is that Dawson Odom, the head coach for Southern, has something like a 46-9 record against all other SWAC opponents. The one opponent that has sort of been his kryptonite, and his program's kryptonite, has been Alcorn State. They were 1-8 coming into this week's game, and now it is 1-9 as Alcorn used a second half in which they basically outscored Southern 24-7 in the second half to win 27-13. I mean, at halftime, the score was Southern 6, Alcorn 3. And then in the second half, the Alcorn does what they do. Felix Harper with a touchdown run. Deshaun Waller with a reception from Felix Harper. Then they get a field goal. Then they get another touchdown pass from Felix Harper. And 1, 2, 3 touchdowns and a field goal, and now all of a sudden Southern is down 27-6, and that's just how it rolled. And one of the key stats that I find interesting, another game without an interception by Felix Harper, AD, and that puts this young man at 20 touchdowns, I think he's only thrown 2. If I remember the stats that I do these stats so often, I kind of know these off the top of my head. I think he's only really thrown 2 interceptions all season. Alcorn does not make too many turnovers. That's one of the things that they do really well. They don't turn the ball over often. And so in a game in which their defense held Southern to 284 total yards, while Alcorn gained 377, time of possession, Alcorn controlled the time of possession, 32-27. First downs were kind of about even, no real advantage, but it was just Alcorn dominating. I mean, they won their 5th game in a row. They won their 8th game in a row at home. This team is proving to be what what we thought they would be. It's a question now with the loss to Southern. Southern, I think the loss to Southern, really what it did, it sort of opened the door for a couple of teams in the SWAC West. I mean, you mentioned the Southeast. Jackson State picked up a win on Thursday in overtime over Prairie View. Another team with an opportunity in the SWAC East, the winner of the Magic City Classic. Obviously that game went into triple overtime. The winner of that game puts themselves in the hunt in the SWAC East. But over in the West, though, I mean, really you got a couple teams over there with 2 losses. Southern is still in the front-runner seat to win the SWAC West. But you got to think, man, if they have to travel again to Alcorn, you got to think, my goodness, what a gut punch. I mean, how are they ever supposed to get over this trend of beating Alcorn State? So, we were just kind of talking about that, AD. I mean, your thoughts on this game, and I mean, is Southern, where do you see Southern finishing out the rest of this season? I mean, what kind of gut punch is losing to Alcorn State for the 9th time in the last 10 games?
Check Florida A&M and see what kind of a gut punch that is, Brian. Haven't seen a team like the Rattlers lose to Bethune 8 consecutive times. Maybe the 2 coaches need to trade, have coffee with each other, see what it takes to beat that one rival that they cannot get over the hump with. But looking at this game in general, Brian, whenever you have 2 teams that should be evenly matched, what are the 2 things that you always look at when you pull out the stat sheet? First 2 things you look at: turnovers, penalties. Southern, 2 interceptions. Penalties, 11 penalties, 103 yards. Alcorn, no turnovers, and penalties, 9 for 65 yards. If you take care of the ball and don't make the mental mistakes, you're going to win the game 9 times out of 10. That's what Alcorn did in this particular game once again. That's why if they continue to have that trend, they're going to continue to dominate Southern.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what Alcorn continues to do in this conference. I made the argument at the beginning of the year that the only reason people don't talk about Alcorn State in the same breath as North Carolina A&T is the fact that they have lost multiple Celebration Bowls. I mean, had they won just one of the Celebration Bowls that they've lost, we might be talking about Alcorn State as being one of the best HBCU teams over the last 5 years. Instead, we talk about North Carolina A&T, and then we go to Alcorn State. And I mean, there are other factors as well. I think the fact that A&T has beaten some FCS schools, they've beaten some PWIs in the FCS, something that Alcorn has failed to do. But, I continue to maintain this is a great program that Coach Fred McNair has built. They even, at halftime, retired Steve McNair's jersey, number 9, forever, what's the word? I guess forever retired.
Immortalized.
Yes, immortalized. Thank you. Forever immortalized in Alcorn State program, Braves football program history.
And deservedly so.
Yeah, deservedly so. And I think earlier this year, the Tennessee Titans did similarly, retire his number. And so it's great to see some maybe 25 years, 20 years later, see this kind of recognition. And it was almost like that sort of spirit of McNair was in the arena, or in the field, on the field, as they made that comeback. I saw some people kind of tweet that and reference that. So I thought that was just pretty cool. And so props to the Braves. Pretty big day for those guys. All right, AD, let's get over to the Magic City Classic, and a classic game it was. Alabama State, Alabama A&M, the 78th meeting, the Magic City of Birmingham, Alabama playing host. Now, I didn't see the official numbers for this game, and I know the weather wasn't the greatest. Did you happen to see the official number of attendance in this game, AD?
No, let's see. According to the SWAC website, 53,217.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's a little bit different than what I have from the box score statistics. So it said 37,852. So I wonder if 57 was the paid and 37. 50. I wonder if 53 was paid and 37 was actually attended because of the weather being what it was. You know, that rain and everything can definitely drive some people to kind of stay out in the tailgate area.
Especially the type of rain that they had in Birmingham, watching that game on ESPN Plus, ESPN3, whichever ESPN that I was watching it on. I don't remember. But yeah, definitely. And having been in Legion Field, where there is no cover from the rain in that particular stadium, and you cannot bring umbrellas or anything into that stadium, yeah, I could see a lot of people staying home in that particular game, Brian.
Well, this was a game that the first half appeared to be, I mean, for pretty much most of this game, it just appeared that this was Alabama State's game. You know, I think I made clear that our prediction versus Sports Simulator predicted Alabama State. I've got too many A's going on right now. Alabama State predicted them to actually win this ball game by almost 10 points. And so at one point at halftime, obviously they're up 21-7 at the half. I mean, you know, Alabama State scored 3 touchdowns in that second quarter, and then in the third quarter, that's where A&M was able to get a touchdown, 1 touchdown from Jordan Bentley, and then in the early parts of the fourth quarter, they got a touchdown run by Akil Glass. And then late into the ball game, both teams' defenses really did a great job, I thought, of controlling the momentum and the pace. Neither team gave up anything to the other, and it pretty much forced us into overtime. And I'll tell you, the overtime was drama-filled, AD. I mean, you know, 3 overtimes. So, you know, after the second overtime, teams have to go to the 2-point conversions. You no longer can go to the actual kick with the field goal. And so for Alabama State, you know, actually Alabama A&M really had the easier time in overtime. You know, they had the ball first. They scored first. Alabama State had to actually score on a 4th and goal from the 4-yard line to actually score and tie it up and send it to the second overtime. Then they, you know, Alabama State did score. A&M answered from a nice pass from Akil Glass to Zabrian Moore from 25 yards out. That forced it to a 3rd overtime. A&M scored first in the 3rd overtime. Glass that time to Jordan Bentley. And then again, A&M State had to score on a 4th down, 4th and 2, just to make it 41. And then on the 2-point play, I would call it controversial. I was surprised there were no flags on it, but Kadar Davis threw a pass, almost a little slant route to his receiver. It was defended by A&M's defensive back, broke it up. Maybe he got there early. It was an interesting no call. That's all I'll say. But the pass was incomplete, and A&M won for the second year in a row in Connell Maynard's tenure there for A&M. And, the Bulldogs, 43, Alabama State, 41. Your thoughts?
Bryan, that's all fine and dandy. What I want to talk about is what happened at halftime of that particular game. Kudos to the band director and everybody in the Bulldogs band for the tribute that they paid to Camille Cupcake McKinney, who had died a few days earlier. For those of you all who do not remember, she was a three-year-old who was found in a dumpster. She's from the Birmingham area, and she vanished from a birthday party a little bit over a week before this particular game. So, and for those of you all who did not see the tribute, there's an article on this in USA Today from the tribute to Alabama A&M's band paid to her at the end of their halftime show. And also on Twitter, it was originally tweeted from B.J. Jones from Inside HBCU Football and retweeted by HBCU Game Day. Props to those media organizations. And just something simple, how the band marches and does different things at halftime, but they came together and formed the word cupcake on the field during their halftime presentation. So I just want to shout that out. Yes, the game was important, but we don't spend enough time on shows like this talking about some of the social things that these young students and these universities, some of the social issues that they take on. And this is such a tragic time that they would take moment out of their band performance to do something like this.
Well said, AD. I guess I'm going to go back for a second and just, while you were telling us about that halftime performance, I was just looking up the young man's name from A&M. Desmond Fletcher was the defensive back credited with the breakup of that 2-point conversion pass. And so with the standings, Alabama A&M with that win moves to a record of 5-3 overall. They are now 2-1 in the conference. 2-1 in the conference, which, like I said, that sets up the upcoming game in 2 weeks against Alcorn State for them. Now, before they do that, though, A&M has a tough game ahead of them as they have to now take on Southern. And so when we talk about – I'm sorry, let me backtrack for a second, because that game against Alcorn State is not till the 16th. So, A&M, here's their schedule over the next 3 weeks. On the road to Southern on November 2nd. Then they host Jackson State, and there's that matchup between Jackson State and A&M. And then they play Alcorn State. When we talk about the scenarios, you want to talk about potential chaos. I don't think Southern is a solid winner. They're not the same team that maybe we've expected in the past. I think this is a team that has serious flaws. And so it'll be interesting to see, can Alabama A&M take advantage of that? We saw earlier in the year a team like Prairie View unable to take advantage of it. We saw a team like UAPB unable to take advantage of it. Can teams like Alabama A&M take advantage of it? I mean, that's what's separating teams right now. Alcorn State definitely did, and so that's sort of right there in the middle of things. AD, let's move forward to another SWAC contest, a game that we also featured, and that was Grambling traveling to UAPB. And we expected a shootout. We were both on the side of UAPB. We thought that this might be the game. This would be the opportunity for the Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions to actually get over the hump, beat one of the power blue bloods of the SWAC, and really make a play for the SWAC West. A loss would sort of seal their fate, as they would have losses not only to Southern, but they'd have losses to Grambling as well. And, unfortunately for them, they would end up losing as Grambling wins their third game in a row. Watch out now. Here come the Tigers. After losing 4 in a row, all they've done is win 3 straight, and they've been impressive in doing so. Grambling gets the 39-33 victory. They actually had to come from behind to get this win. There was a pretty interesting pick six again by defensive back Williams. Let me make sure I get his name, Joseph Williams, and his 55-yard interception return. Now, AD, he has had 4 interceptions this season. Now 3 of them have gone for pick sixes. 3 of them. And I'm not really sure there's anyone else in the nation who has done that. We'll kind of look at the stats a little bit later. But that sort of gave Grambling a 39-26 lead and was really the separating factor. But, hey, UAPB came all the way back, grabbed a touchdown to make it 39-33, and even had a chance there at the end of the ball game inside of the red zone to actually score and potentially take the lead, but the Tigers defense held up. And so, what do you think, Grambling? I mean, is this – I got to think – I'm going to tell you now, of all the coaching jobs going on, it's very likely Broderick Fobbs might be doing one of his best coaching jobs of the year. And he very well could be up for SWAC Coach of the Year. I mean, there are a few more games left to go, but he could really be up for SWAC Coach of the Year if things continue to go the way they're going for Grambling.
Bryan, once again, when you break down this game, stat number 1 you look at is turnovers. We know UAPB turned the ball over more than Grambling did with the 3 interceptions that they had. Number 2, you look at penalties. And UAPB, 7 penalties, 79 yards. Grambling, 4 penalties, 4 yards. The one X factor beyond those 2, scores off of special teams and or defense. The pick six, which in essence was the primary difference in the game, Bryan. And yes, Fobbs is doing a tremendous job getting Grambling back into the mix. Unfortunately, it started a little bit too late where mathematically Grambling cannot win the SWAC West, but what Grambling can do is play spoiler to everybody else on that west side of the division, Bryan.
Why do you say they can't win the West? I'm looking at their conference record right now is only one. It's 1-2. So technically they are, yes, they're 2 wins behind Southern in the win column, but they're only 1 game behind them in the conference. So, I mean, here's Grambling. They have Texas Southern coming up this week. Texas Southern is winless. Now, then, of course, they host Alcorn State. That's going to be a challenge. and then they actually play Mississippi Valley State, so who just got their first conference win this past Saturday. So Grambling could win 2 of their last 3 heading into the Bayou Classic. And we've already mentioned Southern's tough schedule up ahead. I don't know, man. I wouldn't say Grambling is out of the hunt. I think Grambling is very much in the hunt, because at worst case, they might have 3 losses in conference heading into the Bayou. And I think,
another loss in conference is going to eliminate Grambling. Let's be real about that. Another loss in conference will eliminate the Grambling Tigers.
Well, that's only if UAPB wins out. If UAPB wins out, and they've got Jackson State, Prairie View, and Texas Southern. Now, Prairie View might be. I mean, those aren't the first 2, Jackson State and Prairie View. Yes, those teams are not having stellar seasons, but let's just be real. I mean, they can beat Arkansas Pine Bluff. They have the ability. They have the athletes on offense and or defense. I don't know. I think you're very optimistic in writing off Grambling, and I think that's to me the way they're playing. Winners of 3 in a row, second longest streak next to Alcorn's 5 in the SWAC overall. I got to say the Tigers are very dangerous. I'd watch out if I'm teams out there. That's all I'm saying. Any final thoughts on the FCS before we take a break and get ready to talk about what's happening over on the Division II side of the world?
No, let's jump into it. Except for if you are wishing for chaos, Brian, Jackson State needs to beat Grambling if you want to see chaos, because Jackson State wins out, they win the East, because Jackson State still has to take on Alcorn. Let that game against Jackson State Alcorn mean something the last week of the year. Then let's see how much fun we're going to have in the SWAC.
Well said. All right, last word on that. And when we come back after this break, we end up talking about the Division II week from week number 9, the weekend games from week number 9 in the Division II action, and how the different scenarios in the SIAC and the CIAA may affect the playoffs for all of these teams who are still in the hunt. You're listening and watching the BCSN Sports Wrap. We'll be back right after these words.
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
The Creole seasoning is a sodium-free and sugar-free blend that's versatile enough to put on anything. One of the first blends I developed more than 8 years ago, the Creole seasoning has an unmistakable aroma, a bold flavor, and a little heat for character. Every time I open one of these bottles, I hear trumpets and big band music.
The Black College Sports Network is proud to partner with ComputerRatings.com. That's COMPUGHTER ratings.com for the upcoming college football season. ComputerRatings.com delivers rankings, game predictions, and statistics for hundreds of professional and collegiate teams. The key feature of ComputerRatings.com is the Versus Sports Simulator, which allows users to simulate any possible matchup and view the predicted scores along with a side-by-side stats analysis. Improve your odds by signing up for a subscription. Monthly, semi-yearly, and yearly subscriptions are available. For our listeners and viewers, use the promo code BCSN19 and get 15% off of your subscription at checkout. Visit www.computerratings.com. That's COMPUGHTER ratings.com.
Let's face it, Shopping for insurance can be time-consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
The Creole seasoning is a sodium-free and sugar-free blend that's versatile enough to put on anything. One of the first blends I developed more than 8 years ago, the Creole seasoning has an unmistakable aroma, a bold flavor, and a little heat for character. Every time I open one of these bottles, I hear trumpets and big band music.
Q Time is our classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.
This December 21st, the best in HBCU football will collide in Atlanta at the Celebration Bowl. MEAC versus SWAC. Champion versus champion. Only one team will rise above the rest and claim the coveted Celebration Bowl trophy. Come join the celebration at Mercedes-Benz Stadium this December. For more information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com.
I've been waiting for days to come like this, better than ever before. And now I know there's more.
Wherever you've been, whatever you've been through, we have a warm welcome waiting for you at more than 325 hotels around the world. Book today at DoubleTree.com. DoubleTree by Hilton, where the little things mean everything.
Hello and welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford and AD Drew here, breaking down week number 9 that just occurred this past weekend. Our earlier segment, we were talking about the FCS, and we're about to get into the Division II games that happen and some of the scenarios that are existing. We want to remind you, if you want to find us on social media, you can find AD at BCSN Drew, DREW. You can find me at DRB365, and of course, you can always find the Black College Sports Network by simply going to at my BCSN1. That's the number 1. That's where you can find us. All right, AD. So now we go to the Division II, and we're going to start in the CIAA. And let's start with I believe it's the only matchup amongst our teams involving, very similar to FCS, the only game that featured 2 teams from our top 5. It included number 2, Virginia Union, who's also ranked number 25 nationally, and Bowie State, our number 1 team in our under D1 poll, ranked 15th nationally. And let's see, as far as predictions go, let's see, you were on the side of Virginia Union. I chose to go with Bowie State. This is our versus game of the week. And it technically turned into the surprise blowout of the weekend, as Bowie State I've seen all kinds of adjectives describing this game, but I'm going to go with what Bowie State used, plasters Virginia Union 52-17. It was the only game in Division II football featuring 2 top 25 teams, and it wouldn't even be close. Bowie State, we just finished with Amir Hall as one of the all-time greats, not only in CIAA history, Division II, black college football, and Bowie State. This young man, Jerome Johnson, all he's done is come in, began the year as the backup. No one really was talking about him. They were talking about another player, Gaston Cooper. all Jerome Johnson has done is just light up the CIAA. I mean, he is making a strong bid for Player of the Year. But in this game, once again, 395, and I say once again because it seems like he has big games. This is his at least second or third multiple touchdown day. 395 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, was actually second in the team in rushing with 56 yards. And this is a day when, I believe Bowie put up 594 yards of total offense on Virginia Union. Just a beating that they put on Virginia Union. And the AD, I mean, you talked to Dr. Parker earlier in the week. Did you see? You obviously didn't see this happening, but what does this tell you maybe about Virginia Union? Does it say anything more about Virginia Union, or does it say something more about Bowie State? Maybe that's a better way of asking the question.
I think this kind of shows us how good Bowie State is more than it shows us how bad Virginia Union is. This Virginia Union team is a good team, is a tough team, having played a good game against a Division II power in Lador-Rhine earlier this year, having beat a FCS opponent in Hampton earlier this year. This may be the game that quantifies Bowie and saying, hey, let's watch these Bowie Bulldogs and see how deep they're going to go in the playoffs on this particular year, because no one, and I repeat, no one expected Bowie to win in the way and in the style that they did in this game, with total domination on all 3 phases of the game: offense, defense, and special teams, Brian.
Yeah, it was a pretty dominating win. I will say I've been paying attention to Bowie's defense this season, and that's sort of the area that I feel like grew. I mean, I think the offense was even though they were making the quarterback change, the reason I think people had them preseason ranked number 1 in a lot of polls, had them ranked where they did, is because they really felt like the offense has been good even before Amir Hall, and they thought it'd be good after Amir Hall. Well, yes, that has remained true. But what has gotten better for Bowie? The defense. If you go look at the defensive numbers from last year to this year, I think this is a better defensive team than what we've seen last year. And that is encouraging. As you said, you're in a region with the defending national champions, Valdosta State. So, it's not inconceivable that should Bowie get to the playoffs again, somewhere down the line, they very well could run into Valdosta State again. And the question is...
Right now, Brian, if everything plays out like I have it in the article that I've got coming out this week, Bowie and Valdosta State will once again meet in the second round of the playoffs, Brian.
Right. Yeah, we want to get into that in a minute. Let's go through some more of these scores, and then we'll kind of go through your scenario, because your scenarios really break down not only just the CIAA but the SIAC. So let's move forward. Not too much to talk about other than just the beating and statistical numbers, and maybe later in the week we'll talk about those. But the biggest upset of the weekend was not Virginia Union. It was not Virginia Union losing the way they did. It was Fayetteville State losing to St. Augustine at home. St. Augustine, the team that fired their coach, replaced him with 2 other coaches.
Co-coaches.
Excuse me, co-coaches, yes. Yeah. And then they managed to get their first win, I think 2 weeks ago is when they got their first win of the season.
Yeah, that is 2 in a row, Brian.
Oh, so it is 2 in a row now for St. Aug.
Yes.
I thought they had a loss in there in between getting their win. But,
no.
Okay, but anyway. Yeah, so the Falcons get their second win, as AD said, in as many weeks. And look, this is a game that pretty much they outgained Fayetteville State in total yards, 368 to 324. They had fewer turnovers, 2 to 3. They had fewer penalties, 5 to 11. And really, I mean, a great play by Fayetteville State to grab a lead, 21 to 20, with 59 seconds left, is where the game was. And our Twitter feed had pretty much thought the game was over. We'll take full ownership of it. I mean, we thought that the game was over at 21-20. Needless to say, Fayetteville State's offense had a little bit different thought, as DeAndre Gilliard ran 17 yards, and then Akil Greer got a 39-yard reception, a ridiculous catch that all of a sudden put the Falcons at the Broncos' 10-yard line. I mean, they're doing this all in a matter of, two plays. 2 plays to get to the Broncos' 10, and then that's where a young man, this won't be the only kicker that had a big day. With 5 seconds left, the freshman from Miami, Florida, Andre Labatt, or is it Labatt? Labatt. Sorry, Andre, but hey, you're a game winner because you knocked down the game-winning field goal that put SAU, St. Aug, with a win over Fayetteville State. And Fayetteville State drops their, I believe it's their first division loss. So they dropped to now 4-1 in the Southern Division and are now 6-2 overall. And that string of South Division champions ships by Fayetteville State is in real jeopardy of not happening.
I know we're on this Fayetteville State game, but I need to backtrack one step, Bryan. Bowie State has wrapped up the Northern Division title early this year, Bryan. I just wanted to throw that out to you. Getting back to Fayetteville State, you have just opened the door up for Winston-Salem State to possibly sneak in and win the Southern Division. If Fayetteville wins their game, they are in control. They've got a 2-game lead in the Southern Division, and then all they have to do is win one of their last 2 games. They win the South. They're guaranteed to play Bowie State for, what would that be, like the 3rd or 4th consecutive time, Bryan?
Yes, definitely. Yes, it would be.
Something ridiculous like this. Now, the Fayetteville State, Winston-Salem State at the end of the year becomes a very, very important game. That's going to be for the Southern Division title. As we take a look at the schedule over the next 2 weeks.
Well, hold on. Let me do this before you go to the schedule. I just wanted to mention the standings real quick because you brought up you brought that into play. And so here's what's interesting about the CIAA, because they have division and conference. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I felt like I asked you this question last year, but the CIAA starts with division and then uses conference record as a tiebreaker. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. It goes with your overall CIAA record. Your overall CIAA conference record is your
first tiebreaker.
Yes, that determines your rank. If you are tied with somebody, it goes head to head, then division.
Okay, so here's how that plays out in the South. And first off, you mentioned Bowie State is unbeaten in the division and conference, 3-0, 5-0. And obviously they beaten Virginia State, beaten Virginia Union. We don't anticipate Bowie losing the last 2 weeks, so pretty much they have for all intents and purposes, wrapped up the Northern Division. Now, in the South, Fayetteville State, they are 2-1 in division.
And Bryan, let's throw one thing out when we talk about the Northern Division. Virginia State and Virginia Union have to play each other, so one of those will eliminate the other team.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, but
yes,
there's still. I mean, what is this? I mean, technically speaking, it's not likely. Bowie State could lose the last 2 games of the season, so that's why they haven't officially clinched the Northern Division. We think. I mean, obviously, you can look at the schedule.
Bowie wins this week. They will clinch it.
They will clinch it, right?
They were on the tiebreak against anybody.
And this week they play winless Lincoln, PA. So, yeah.
Yes.
All right, so moving down to the South. Fayetteville has a 2-1 division record, 4-1 in conference. Winston-Salem, with their 3rd win in a row, their 3rd division win in a row, if I'm not mistaken. They are 3-0 in division, 3-2 in the conference. Now, they're listed in second, and I think they're listed in second because of that conference record.
Correct.
But the 2-1 that Fayetteville also matches up with a 2-1 record with Shaw, who I believe they still have to play. And St. Aug's now is standing at 2-1 in the division. So pretty interesting scenarios playing out there where not only Winston-Salem, but Shaw. I mean, obviously Winston-Salem is the team that controls their destiny at this point, because if they're able to put a loss on Fayetteville, they essentially would jump to the top of the Southern Division, and that would be all they need to get to the championship game. Am I correct in that?
But Winston-Salem has to get past Shaw this weekend first before they even look at that Fayetteville State game.
Right. So basically, we've got an elimination game coming up between Winston-Salem and Shaw, and then who plays Fayetteville the final week of the season? Is that Winston-Salem?
Yes, Fayetteville plays Winston-Salem. If Shaw beats Winston-Salem, Shaw will still need some help.
Right. They'll turn around, and then they will be rooting for Winston-Salem to beat Fayetteville the following week.
Right, as Shaw takes on St. Aug on the last Saturday of the season.
Right. So wow, how crazy! Now you want chaos? There's your chaos right there. Now in the CIAA South, there's your chaos. That's what the loss by Fayetteville State does. It puts teams in play that you probably didn't think had an opportunity, because I think we all kind of assumed it was Fayetteville State's and they were running away with it. So
and they play Livingstone this weekend.
Yeah, man, tough Livingstone, man. Here you go once again. Now 4 losses in a row after starting the year 4-0, 4 losses in a row. Okay, before we move over to the SIAC, I have to make honorable mention of Deshaun Wethington's performance for Shawan against Elizabeth City State. Shawan ended up winning a homecoming game, 49-41. Deshaun Wethington. Now, I mentioned him among the backs in the CIAA that I really liked. Well, here's this young man on 28 carries. He ran for 297 yards and 3 touchdowns. 297 is a season high in Division II. I mean, unbelievable performance by Wethington. And look, I got to go back and look, but I think Wethington also had a big game a few weeks back as well. This isn't his first taste with being the top running back in the black college football, because that was ridiculous. He still didn't break the 299 that Jermaine Martin had, so that kind of still stands as the most overall in a black college football season. But man, that's still an impressive performance. I just had to mention that Wethington produced the most yards in a single game at home for Shawan, nearly missing the all-time single-game mark of 308. That's ridiculous. So
can we go ahead and just make him Offensive Player of the Week, Brian? Don't even consider anybody else.
Yeah, I would say he's in the running. I would say he's in the
right.
running. All right. Let's move over to the SIAC, and one of our featured games was Albany State coming in, our number 4 ranked team. Oh, and I didn't mention this. Fayetteville State was ranked number 5 in our poll. I failed to mention that they were ranked number 5. I'll just leave that there. Number 4 in our poll was Albany State. This was their first week in the poll, and they were on the road traveling to Savannah State to take on the Tigers at homecoming. And this is I did not know this, and we failed. I feel like we failed, or to mention that Albany State is Savannah State's oldest rival. Or maybe I don't know. Did you mention this? That Albany State is Savannah State's?
I did not mention that. That was a bit of information that I did not have going into the interview with Coach Quinn.
Well, the first time these two teams played goes all the way back to 1932. Saturday was the 62nd meeting between these schools. And, of course, we're very familiar with Savannah State's history over the last 20 years. I mean, they have not had a winning season since 1998. Get that. Have not had a plus 500 season since 1998 when they were 7-4 under then head coach Darryl McNeil. 1998. I mean, we're talking 21 years. 21 years. They were still in the SIAC back then. And, of course, the 19 years that they spent in Division I, just didn't kind of work out as they had hoped. But now they've come back. We thought this was going to be a dangerous team in the SIAC, and they proved it. I mean, they have proved it in a major way. I mean, they own Atlanta, and, I mean, they're pretty much the state champs of Georgia. I mean, I don't know who's left in the state of Georgia.
They still have Fort Valley.
Okay, all right. So we don't want to quite declare them the state champs yet, but they're pretty much getting close to being declared the state champs with a 35-19 win over Albany State. This was a game that was pretty close in the first half. I mean, Savannah State had a 14-13 lead in the first half. That touchdown, they actually scored an 18-yard touchdown with 14 seconds to go in the second quarter to give them the lead. And then Savannah State pretty much controlled and owned the third quarter with a pair of touchdowns. One was a run by D'Angelo Durham of 62 yards, and then there was a pass from Enaj Carter from Hardage, from young man Hardage to Carter, that basically put Savannah State up 28-13. Albany State would actually get another touchdown and try to cut that deficit, but then Desmond Young would get a 45-yard fumble recovery, take it to the house with a scoop and score, 35-19, and that was all she wrote with 2:46 to play. And Savannah State, the new kids back on the block, are now in control of their destiny, so to speak. Well, sort of semi in control, but they might have just knocked Albany State out of the SIAC East race. What about those Tigers, AD? What about those Tigers?
What about those Tigers? We all knew that they had a stellar defense coming into this game, led by Young and Walter Yates, who had 11 tackles on the day. So kudos to Coach Quinn and having for lack of better words, having the balls to try something untraditional in today's society and going with the option run first offense where all everybody wants to do is get the ball in space and get the ball to their playmakers in space. Coach Quinn decided to get the ball to his playmakers behind 300 pounds of beef.
You know what's interesting, and this is for anyone, if you have not taken time to watch Savannah State, and I would encourage anyone to go on YouTube, and I don't know if I should do this, I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm hoping I don't get this feed in trouble at all. But if you want to go see some games from the Black College season, go to YouTube and type in Alex Hines, Hines. And that is where you can pretty much go back and see a lot of the games from this season that have been televised or streamed online. And if you go back and watch Savannah State, they run that triple option out of a shotgun formation, which really is it's a bit of genius, because it's almost like you would think they're in a pistol formation. Well, if you're familiar with the pistol, that's pretty much where the quarterback's in shotgun. There's a running back 2 or 3 yards behind him.
Yeah, and then in the pistol, the quarterback's about 3 yards instead of 5 yards, like you would in the traditional shotgun.
Exactly. So they're in a pistol formation, but then they actually run those counter reads, little RPOs. So I mean, it really is a interesting offense to watch being run. They don't throw the ball very much, if hardly at all. I mean, in this game against Albany State, neither team. I mean, Albany State had 54 passing yards. Savannah State had 51. Pretty much everything was done on the ground. You know, the rushing game, Savannah State had 272 yards rushing. Albany State had 229. And it was just the big plays. I mean, the big plays, and that third quarter really broke Albany State. And then, of course, when you have a fumble recovery for a touchdown, the defense sort of sealed the deal there for Savannah State. And that's all she wrote. And now AD, like you said, it sets up a real interesting matchup this upcoming Saturday for Savannah State, as they play for Fort Valley State, who they won again. And Fort Valley, I believe now Fort Valley, their win streak is up to 6. I mean, they're a hot team. They lost their first 2 games of the year, lost to Miles, listen to this, lost to Miles, lost to Florida A&M. Miles 6-2, Florida A&M 7-1, and now all Fort Valley State has done is win. All they do is win, and I tell you what, I'm excited to see this game between Savannah State and Fort Valley State. I think there were 8,000 people in attendance for Savannah State. Good crowd, good numbers.
And expect about that many. Not quite that many, but expect 6,500 for this Fort Valley game.
Oh, you think there'll be actually less?
It was homecoming, Brian. This past week.
But still, look, and see, that's where I would still push back and say, anyone from Savannah State, if you're not getting, great that you went to homecoming, great that you saw your Tigers play a great game against Albany State. I'm glad to see that you are having success. I mean, after years of toiling away in Division I football, not having a winning season in 20 years, you're going to be guaranteed at least a 500 season. You may very well be in an SIAC championship game. This game.
You think we'll see Shannon Sharp at the SIAC championship game?
Who?
Shannon Sharp.
Oh, Shannon Sharp. Well, look, he should be there. Somebody tweet this to him. Shannon Sharp, you need to be there. You need to be talking about your Savannah State Tigers taking on Fort Valley State this upcoming Saturday. You and Skip need to debate that. Debate the merits of, look, watch me here. Debate the merits of small schools. Do small schools, do HBCU schools belong in Division I football? Because Savannah State is your test case to show you why potentially your teams don't belong in Division I. Look at the success they're having. Now, I mean, this is just one season. Call it an instant overreaction. That's, this is going out on Monday, so that's what we like to do on Monday, right? Instant overreaction. Yeah, I'm just letting you know. Hey, it's a great day for the Tigers. All right, I'm done. I'm done with that rant.
Done playing armchair quarterback. Okay.
I'm done. All right. Let's move over to another major upset that happened. We saw number 5 Fayetteville State go down, a champion in the CIAA. We saw Albany State, our number 4 team, go down, a champion in the SIAC East. Now we saw Miles go up to Ohio, taking on Central State in muddy, rainy, nasty conditions in Ohio, Wilberforce, Ohio. And I tell you, it would go down to a late field goal by another freshman kicker. What is it with freshman kickers? Freshman kickers getting the job done. Joshua Nunez seals the win as Central State would get. And I'm tell you what, if you see the highlights videos, if you haven't, we'll be posting them on our Twitter feed. I may have already posted it or retweeted it, but he kicked the field, and I don't have the official numbers on how far it was, but when he kicked it, there was a Miles player that overjumped the block, which I thought was kind of interesting. I've never seen anybody overjump the block, but he overjumped the ball coming off of Nunez's foot. And then the kick barely clears the front end or the lower part of the goalpost. I mean, it cleared it by about maybe 5-6 feet. And that's what the Central State needed to get that win. And they knocked off Miles, and Miles now drops to 6-2 with a 3-1 mark in conference play. And we've been watching Miles the last couple of weeks, AD. They've been flirting with this kind of loss over the last 2 to 3 weeks. And this week it just kind of hit them, right?
Yeah, I for lack of a better word, they, after dominating the early portion of the season, they've had a couple, 3, what we like to call trap games in a row. Now, you would think after you've had one trap game and you survive that trap game, you would make the proper adjustments so that it doesn't happen to you again. But it has happened once again. And for this game to be as low scoring as it was, Brian, is really really shocking. Because we've seen Miles put up 40, 50, 60 points a couple of times this year. And Central, we know, can score some offense, even scoring 36 points in a 40-point loss, something ridiculous like that. So no one expected this game to be as low scoring as it was, Brian.
Think about the total yards in this ball game. Central State was held to under 200 yards, 195, but Miles didn't do that much better. They only had 224 yards total. The passing numbers were atrocious. Miles with only 29 yards passing. Central State did have 88. Miles rushing the ball 195 times, or 195 yards, is what got them. I mean, Miles had more first downs. They had fewer penalties, and, third downs. I mean, this is, once again, Miles, this is coming off Miles having 22 penalties, I think it was, against Edward Waters the week before. Well, their coach, Coach Ruffin, must have got in them because they fixed that. They only had 3 penalties in this game. But, I mean, they even controlled the time of possession, 34-44 to 25-16. But yet and still, when it came down to it late in the ball game, they were unable to really produce when it counted. The offense is that he's, so I don't know. It's just in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's really what did him in there. Fourth quarter.
45 degrees, Brian. Heavy rain, 25 miles an hour winds. That's why the passing game was affected, Brian.
Well, there you go. Yep, weather will do that. But I think the other team got 88 yards. That's all I'm gonna say. The other team still got 80 yards, and they had a 62-yard pass play. So
Brian, Miles came from 75-degree temperatures in central Alabama to 45 degrees in Wilberforce, Ohio. The body cannot adjust in one day very easily to that. And it makes a difference for southern teams who travel north later in the season.
So with Miles losing, it opens the door in the SIAC West because Tuskegee now is back in the picture. They won 29-10 over Lane. I believe Kentucky State is back in the picture. They're sitting with a record of 5-2 overall. They beat Edward Waters 12-0.
Kentucky State as their 2 losses to both Miles and Tuskegee, though.
Oh, okay, that's right. Yep, thank you for clarifying. I knew they had lost 2, just wasn't sure how that played out.
So Kentucky State is pretty much with the victory by either one of those 2 teams this weekend. Kentucky State is eliminated.
What do you think? Now Kentucky State has really played, let's see, 7 games. They may not obviously. Is there any scenario? And let's kind of forward the conversation to scenarios. Is there any scenario that maybe are you considering Kentucky State? I mean, let's say they went out. Let's say they went out and have 2 Division I wins on their resume, and the 2 losses would have come to the 2 teams that will be playing for first place and probably end up as second place in the SIAC West. Is there a chance, any chance for Kentucky State to, I don't know, jump somebody and maybe find their way in the playoff mix? What are your thoughts?
I'm going to give you the long answer, Brian. No. and now let me break it down why. The 2 Division I wins, as far as the NCAA is concerned, mean absolutely nothing. The NCAA only takes Division II wins and Division II region wins when they consider your record for playoff berths. That's number 1. Number 2, Miles is right on the border of getting into the playoffs. Even though they can come in as a automatic qualifier, which you have to read by article to understand the different scenarios of when your conference only gets you halfway there, that you still have to be ranked within the region. Tuskegee, it is a non-factor in this scenario because they are too far down the chart to be able to help Kentucky State with a quote-unquote quality victory or quality loss.
Okay. Well, so that eliminates Kentucky State.
And let me throw one more out at Brian.
You're going to pile on to that, huh? Okay, go ahead.
No, Kentucky State cannot, because of their schedule. They scheduled the St. Louis Classic against Lincoln, Missouri on, I believe that's November 23rd, which just happens to be the opening day of the Division II playoffs.
Do you think this is that's a team who didn't think that they were going to have the kind of season that they are having? I bet you they won't do this. I bet you they won't do that again.
I bet you they won't either. Not if they were smart. And that was probably a game that was set in stone probably before the coach got there, because any coach wants to put themselves in a position to be able to get to the postseason. But that game alone, besides other scenarios, eliminates Kentucky State. And I guarantee you they will not make enough money going to the playoffs to break their contract.
All right, let's do this. We're going to take a break. When we come back, you're going to talk a little bit about the playoff scenarios that give us a little tease to what's going to be in your article that we'll be posting on the website within the next 24 hours. And then I'm just going to make a note of just maybe some other games, some interesting games that happened. I mean, we had a punt return. We had another fantastic finish inside of a minute in North Carolina. That was a pretty outstanding play that happened. Maybe even mention another homecoming blowout, and then we will give our players of the week. So we're going to take a break, come back, finish up, and then wrap up the show. You're listening to the BCSN HBCU Week 9 wrap-up show. My name is Brian Fulford. He's AD Drew. We'll be back right after these words.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
I've been waiting for days to come like this, better than ever before. And now I know there's more.
Wherever you've been, whatever you've been through, we have a warm welcome waiting for you at more than 325 hotels around the world. Book today at DoubleTree.com. DoubleTree by Hilton, where the little things mean everything.
Q Time is a classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.
This December 21st, the best in HBCU football will collide in Atlanta at the Celebration Bowl. MEAC versus SWAC. Champion versus champion. Only one team will rise above the rest and claim the coveted Celebration Bowl trophy. Come join the celebration at Mercedes-Benz Stadium this December. For more information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford and AD Drew here, recapping some of the top games from week number 9, our top 7 games, and also some of the other games, all kinds of scenarios happening. Our top 5, we had all kinds of winners and losers. I mean, we had four teams in our under D1 poll lose. The only team that won, Bowie State. Number 2, Virginia Union lost. Number 3, Miles lost. Number 4, Albany State lost. Number 5, Fayetteville State lost. Over in the FCS, the only loss occurred to number 2, Bethune-Cookman. Number 2, Bethune-Cookman, as everybody else continues to roll and won their games. So.
And those of you all who put Bethune, not in our poll, but in other polls, put Bethune ahead of FAMU. You saw my tweet. What were y'all thinking?
Did you actually see somebody do that? I didn't see any polls that did that, but did you actually see that?
Yes, I saw that on a couple of the smaller black college polls where Bethune was rated ahead of FAMU.
All right, I'm not interested in calling them out, but
I'm not gonna call them out. But you could do the research, because the new polls had not come out as of the time of us taping this. But yes, Bethune was ahead of FAMU in at least 2 polls that I saw last week.
Do you pretty much expect to see the same 5 teams in our Division I poll?
Yes. No one outside of, for me personally, no one outside of those 5 teams has really impressed me, has started to have a stellar season. The SWAC teams are beating up on each other. The independent teams, Hampton, Tennessee State, are having mediocre seasons. So there's really nobody else out there to make any noise but the 4 teams in the BAC and the 1 team that's in the SWAC. Although another week, if Jackson State pulls off a victory this weekend and one of the BAC teams loses, whoever comes in number 4 or number 5 in our poll, you could possibly see Jackson State sneak in next week.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. And then over on the under D1 with 4 teams losing, I won't ask you for your guess or for your exact teams, but maybe give me a thought of the 4 that lost. How many stay in the top 5?
Miles stays in the top 5. Fayetteville is gone. I'm going to say Albany is gone also. I'm going to say those 2 are gone.
And you would think Virginia Union would stay based on...
Virginia Union is going to be 50-50. Virginia Union may come in at number 5 at best. But it's not. It's because of how they lost, which may knock Virginia Union out of the poll. But I don't see Virginia Union being no higher than 5 in our upcoming poll. The question is, who's going to be number 2, given all the losses?
Right. I mean, when 2 through 5 lose, traditionally you move people up. I don't know. Is Fort Valley? Let's talk. Who are the teams that are?
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you who was my number 2 team this week. We all know Bowie's going to be the number 1. I put Fort Valley at number 2 this week. They deserved it. They deserve to be the number 2 team this week. I
think Savannah State has made a play to jump into the top 5.
I put West Virginia 3, West Virginia State 3, Miles 4, and Savannah 5. That was my 5 that I voted for.
Here's it's interesting. I feel that's too low for Savannah State, and here's why. Look at who Savannah State has played and beaten convincingly. Now, West Virginia State with another win, but in a higher rated conference. It's not that much higher rated. It's not that much higher rated than the SIAC. It's not. Well, we just looked at the computer ranking. Go back and look at the computer rankings for conference. It's not. It sits 2 notches above. It's actually like the Mountain East, then it's the then it's CIAA and the SIAC.
The Mountain East will get guaranteed 2, if not 3, in the Division 2 in the region for Division 2 playoffs. The SIAC will struggle to get their conference champion in. That's why you put West Virginia State higher than you put the SIAC
but
team
2
right
spots
now.
higher. Who's 4? Who did you vote for as 4?
Miles.
Miles was 3.
Miles dropped to 4 for me.
Look at Miles' 3 of the last 4 games by Miles. I'm just saying, I'm just putting it out there for a debate and argument's sake as to Miles versus Savannah State. And then if you look at the recency of the last 3 to 4 weeks, better wins, comeback wins, losing the teams that you probably shouldn't have lost to, just saying. Just something to think about. So we think that Fayetteville, we think West Virginia's in play. We think Savannah State's in play. Anybody else outside of that group in play?
For
jump in.
To
jump into the. Okay.
No, the only other team that could possibly jump in would be Langston.
Okay. Well, Langston now 5-2, 4-1. Of course, winning 69-7. First win after the loss to Ottawa University that snapped their 29-game conference winning streak, and they got a big win this past weekend. I know that game was seen on the Black College Sports Network, and they got some tremendous yardage there. Of course, we're very familiar with Tim Whitfield. He only had 14 carries for 72 yards, but it was quarterback Jordan Cooper who had the big day for Langston, as he was 12 attempts for 131 yards. And then passing, he was 20 of 30 for 260 yards. That was just an overall big day. We have big days like that. It makes the homecoming. It makes the alumni feel really good. So that's why you want to play softer teams for homecoming. Make the alumni feel good. All right. What else? I know I wanted to mention before we get into the scenarios, how about the ending of the North Carolina Central Delaware State game? We didn't really talk about this game because it wasn't really a feature game, but the game is tied at 23. And, of course, North Carolina Central is hosting. The game is tied at 23. It's a kickoff right after Delaware State had scored to tie it at 23. Then, with 50 seconds remaining, a North Carolina Central freshman gets the kickoff return, Brandon Codrington, and he runs it 75 yards to the house. Okay, AD, and going to the playoff scenarios that are taking place coming up here in the upcoming weeks. Of course, we have 3 weeks left of the Division II season, but of course for the SIAC and the CIAA, they host championship games on that third week. So for a lot of teams, these last 2 weeks of the regular season are what's in front of them. Let's go through let's give the people sort of a sneak peek or a look ahead at what your column is going to be about and what the playoff scenarios look like as we know, or as you think they will be.
All right, Brian. First of all, I've identified 7 teams with a realistic / outside chance of making the Division II playoffs. First of all, what does it take to make the playoffs? Most people don't understand, and there is a slight change to the playoff formula this year. First of all, you have to be one of the top 7 finishers in your super region. The super regions are comprised of 4 conferences within a geographical area. Most of our Division II teams are in Super Region 2, which is made up of the CIAA, the SIAC, the South Atlantic Conference, and the Gulf South Conference. The only team outside of that region that has a chance of making the playoffs is going to be West Virginia State, who compete in the Mountain East Conference, and they are in Super Region 1. So we're going to start off with West Virginia State. Plain and simple, Brian. If the Yellow Jackets win out, they are in. They have top-rated Notre Dame of Ohio left on their schedule, although they do have a tough matchup this weekend. If they went out, even with a loss to Notre Dame of Ohio in the last game of the season, West Virginia State is still in. The difference that a Notre Dame loss would mean to them could be the difference between them hosting the first round or going on the road during the first round. Now, what does it take for you to host a first round game, Brian, you may ask? First of all, I said there are 7 teams. Obviously, that's an odd amount of teams. Somebody's going to be sitting home week 1. The number 1 seed gets a bye. The next 6 will play week 1. Seeds 2, 3, and 4 will be at home, and those teams will be ranked in order based upon their regional rankings. In the past, there has been a 5, 6, or 7 seed team, and you just followed the bracket. 2 plays 7, 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5. Not so fast, my friend, as Lee Corso would say. Not starting in 2019. The other 3 seeds, which would have been the number 5, number 6, and number 7, are now at-large teams. That means they can be placed anywhere. What the NCAA has decided to do is to make those matchups for those road teams geographically. They want to eliminate teams having to fly to play first-round matchups. This, in theory, will save the NCAA money. Also, if they have teams that are within a short enough distance to drive, this may increase fan support and attendance at the games, because now fans will follow their teams to the respective playoff games, which in essence will create revenue for the NCAA. One other thing to keep in mind, Brian, conference champions only have to finish in the top 9, not the top 7. So if a conference champion finishes 8 or 9, they will bump out the next lowest seed, i.e. the number 7. If you have conference champions at number 8 and number 9, then they will bump out seeds 6 and 7 for the conference champions to come in. Have I lost you yet, Brian?
Oh yeah, I'm completely lost. That's why I'm so thankful that you're going to be putting this in writing.
All right, let's quickly go down. Regional rankings have not come out yet. I've comprised my own regional ranking where I think these teams will rank when the first set of regional rankings come out, and then the teams that are going to be just outside the money. And we're just going to concentrate on our teams, our HBCUs. Bowie State will probably be the number 4 team in the regional ranking. Bowie wins out, they're in. Bowie wins out, they're going to get a home game. There's no other way about it. They are one of, count on Brian, 4 undefeated teams within Super Region 2, Brian. Valdosta State from the Gulf South Conference, Lenore Rhine, and Wingate from the SAC, the South Atlantic Conference. There will only be a maximum of 3 undefeated teams at the end of the season, because Lenore Rhine and Wingate are yet to play each other. So one of those teams will knock each other out. If Bowie finishes the season undefeated, they will, at worst, be a number 3 seed.
Wow.
Yeah,
so that's a lot to digest, and AD is going to put all of that in writing. We're going to put it up on our website, mybcsn.net.
Right.
And
I was just going to say a couple other teams that we need to watch out for that have realistic shots at getting in. Miles, right now, my scenario is sitting number 9, which would get them in as a conference champion. They would knock out the number 17, which is Carson Newman in my polls. Miles, for the SIAC, the only chance where Miles is the best chance for the SIAC to get a team in the playoffs. The other SIAC team with a chance to get in is going to be Fort Valley State. They're number 12 in my projected regional ranking. Fort Valley, first of all, Miles has to win out to get into the championship game. Fort Valley has to win out, and then Fort Valley has to beat Miles in the championship game to have an outside chance of getting in. The two Virginia schools, one of them will eliminate the other school. Bowie has to lose twice, and even if Bowie loses twice, the Virginia schools are going to need some help. If you're from one of those Virginia schools, I'm sorry, don't count on it. The only other HBCU that has a chance is going to be Fayetteville State, although they really shot themselves in the foot this weekend with that loss this particular weekend. But once again, Fayetteville State has to win out, get into the conference championship game, and defeat Bowie State. The big scenario is if Fayetteville State beats Bowie State, does the CIAA get two teams in? If the CIAA gets two teams in, do they get their second team in at the expense of the SIAC? These are different scenarios that I talk about in my article, Brian, and what it's going to take. And these things will start playing itself out over the next 2 weeks, and I will revise this article and go with different scenarios based upon the wins and losses over these final 2 to 3 weeks of the season, Brian.
Man, that's some unbelievable depth there. I appreciate you digging in and do all of that, man, definitely. Players of the week, top performers. Now, I mean, this is a small sample size, but I think we can both agree. We already mentioned Deshaun Wethington of Shawan, 29 attempts, 297 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But I think we'd also have to look at Jerome Johnson of Bowie in a matchup of a 1 versus 2 top 25 teams. He goes just 23 of 28. I say just 395 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. Also ran 7 times for 58 net yards. I think those guys, both of those two, should be our offensive players of the week. Any clapback, any disagreement with me on that?
Brian, I would have to dig deep into the stats, into the things to find somebody who had a better performance than one of those two.
And then for our defensive player of the week, I would say we got to look at Jacob Roberts, the freshman linebacker from North Carolina A&T, who recorded 15 tackles. 10 of them were solos. He had 6 tackles for loss, and he had 3 sacks in the homecoming win for North Carolina A&T. I mean, a true freshman, AD. I mean, how sick is that for a true freshman to put up those kind of numbers?
I mean, you put up those kind of numbers in front of the alumni, Brian. You are a true beast.
Yeah, definitely. And then, I thought the field goal special teams, just, a special mention, Noel Ruiz, who scored 15 points as he was 3 for 3 from field goals. He was 6 of 7 on PATs. And then on Thursday night, Adrian Salazar, he was 4 of 4 from field goals. And then he was 2 of 3 on PETs for 14 points scored. He actually, I believe, I'm trying to think what the final score. Yes, he kicked the final game-winning, what turned out to be the game-winning field goal for Jackson State in their overtime win over Prairie View. That game was on Thursday. So, I mean, any disagreement on any of those names I mentioned for players of the week, AD?
No, I won't even begin to disagree with you on those, Brian. Those all sound like excellent choices to me.
Thank you, sir. All right, so a quick look ahead to week number 9. Obviously, first off, I got to mention on Friday night on the Black College Sports Network on mybcsn.net/EWC, you can watch the live broadcast of Tuskegee traveling in town to Jacksonville, when I say in town, to take on Edward Waters. That game will be broadcast online. That is on Friday night, and then, of course, all the other games kick off on Saturday. And I would say your main spotlight games, of course, they're going to start with the game that's 1:30 Eastern time in Orangeburg, South Carolina. That's North Carolina A&T traveling to South Carolina State. We mentioned what type of game that is in the MEAC race for the trip to the Celebration Bowl. And then you've also got, at the same time, Winston-Salem homecoming against Shaw. And that game will be essentially, it could either turn the CIAA, the CIAA South?
Yes.
The CIAA South into chaos, or it could make the picture a lot clearer for Winston-Salem should they win. That's a game that I think is worth paying attention to. How about Morehouse traveling to Albany State? How about Kentucky State traveling to Miles? I mean, talk about a big opportunity for Kentucky State. I mean, Kentucky State has a chance to not only take out – they essentially, with a win on the road, could take Miles out of the playoff picture and the SIAC championship picture altogether. So definitely a big game for Miles. Fort Valley State traveling to Savannah State. That is a 2 p.m. Eastern. Winner probably gets to say they are state champs. I mean, literally, if Savannah State wins that, they will be running around with a shirt and everything saying state champs, state champs.
And that is probably our 1A matchup as far as game of the week, Brian. Hands down.
1A. So who's 1B?
No, excuse me, 1B game. 1A game is going to be the South Carolina State, North Carolina A&T game. This is going to be your 1B game.
I got you. Okay. And then I think the interesting SWAC game will be Alabama A&M traveling to Southern in Baton Rouge. Southern's homecoming, and they got Alabama A&M off of the triple overtime win against Alabama State. It'll be interesting to see if there's any effects of playing triple overtime, for A&M, because that game, although it's a cross-divisional matchup, it does count on the records. And, of course, somehow, let's just say a Southern loss makes everything in the West possible for everyone else. An A&M win keeps them within shooting distance of Alcorn. So I think that's a pretty significant game. So those are just the general spotlights. I don't know if some of those games will probably be our feature games. You got another one to add?
I got 2 games I wanted to add to your list, Brian. In the SWAC, Jackson State, Arkansas Pine Bluff, which is going to really open things up in on the east side, because the Jackson State win still leaves them in control of their own destiny, whereas a UAPB win eliminates Jackson State from title contentions and still gives Pine Bluff an outside chance of winning the East. Of course, they're going to need some help in somebody knocking off Alcorn. And in Institute, West Virginia, Charleston and West Virginia State, these 2 teams come in tied at number 3 in that conference, Brian, in the Mountain East Conference. This is one of 2 big games that West Virginia State has remaining on their schedule. They need this victory to pretty much lock themselves up for a spot in the regional rankings when the regional rankings come out, Brian, and to put them in the playoffs. So, big game for West Virginia State up there in Institute, West Virginia, Brian.
Okay, well said, AD. So we will be coming to you later in the week with that particular podcast, our Week 10 preview show. Middle of the week, possibly be looking out for our midweek reports. Just a little new supplement that I've been kind of putting together. If things work out well, we'll have something. What we may do on that midweek report, AD, I may be able to talk a little bit about the basketball preseason selections, as guess what? November is coming up this week, and college basketball is starting. So might be a good time to kind of drop in some news and notes, just a little teaser about basketball season and who the predicted teams are. So.
And also stay tuned, as Bryan and myself will be working to get as many interviews as we can with the current football coaches and possibly a basketball coach or two this week. So stay tuned for those supplements that you have to our Sports Wrap show as we talk with some of the best minds in HBCU sports.
Look at you with the teaser that I didn't even know about. Okay, good deal. All right, that's going to do it for this show. Follow us on Twitter. Find me at DRB365. You can find AD at BCSN Drew, DREW. Make sure to follow the Black College Sports Network at MyBCSN1, the number 1. Also on Instagram and Facebook with that very same at MyBCSN1. I don't know what you call that on Instagram, and user ID or user tag, I guess. Also, look for our Black College Sports, too many things. Find our Facebook page, our Sports Wrap Facebook page, and our website, of course, is mybcsn.net. All right, that's going to do it. It's been a great podcast. We appreciate you listening, following through. Give us your thoughts, scenarios, playoff scenarios, who's in, who stays in, who's out, who blew their chance this past weekend. We want to hear from you. So we hope you enjoyed this show. AD, any final words for the people?
No, Bryan, it's once again, 3 weeks left in the season. Let's get ready. This is the best time of the year. Basketball starting, football's winding down. What's better for a sports fan?
Sounds good. So that'll do it for us. That's AD Drew. I'm Bryan Fulford. Thank you for listening and watching, and we will see you later on in the week. That is all, folks. Take care. Have a great week. Peace out.
I'll holler.
But my beats, they are hard.
It's like a loot machine.